Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge, if necessary, destroy media and narratives. I'm Peter Lavelle. I'm also here with George Szamuely, the co-founder of the Gaggle, and we're honored to have Philip Giraldi. He's a former counterterrorism expert at the CIA. Gentlemen, I'm keeping a notebook now because too many ideas are coming to me during the day. And I'm serious, okay? I just bought this and I'm filling it up rapidly here. I'm going to try something here. Phil, I want to go to you first. I wrote down some notes, and I want you to pick up on one of them and run, whatever one you want. The war on terror is being morphed is being morphed from the Islamic terrorism, the struggle against it, to against domestic terrorism. Now, neoliberal ideology deems dissent to be akin to insurrection. Big tech has given a green light to commence a massive purge of dissident voices. Number one is Donald Trump. And by the way, I didn't know Michelle Obama had the authority to have people kicked off social media, but I was quickly corrected of that today. The elimination of due process. We have legislation in New York State where a person can be deemed a public security threat because of COVID. Well, it's interesting how George and I have been talking about for months how COVID just turns into this goalpost that you keep moving further and further away. Also, will a pro-democracy movement be spawned in the U.S. as a result of what the media is doing and the Democrats? And finally, and maybe Phil, you can talk about this one later on, the U.S. is getting the kind of democracy it championed overseas. Pick one, my friend, and run with it.
Yeah, well, I'm interested in the roots of the problem, and they come from the so-called global war on terror, which basically created the instruments that are now being used and exploited to make sure that the American public, and indeed the entire world to a certain extent, is fed a lot of crap that really is either totally fabricated, or it's something that's spun in a certain way to create a certain impression. I've been noticing over the course of the past couple years, and really has nothing to do with Trump, the fact that the social media have been clamping down, have been censoring. Most people these days who are interested in anything get their information from social media, and this is a major turning. And I'm afraid it's going to get a lot worse under the Democrats, because the Democrats have already been talking about having thought commissions and truth commissions and finding out the facts about all the terrible things that are going on. Of course, this is all a matter of spin, and it's a matter of supporting their agenda.
George, you want to jump in?
Well, you raised an awful lot of points there. Excellent points. Yeah, I mean, this is no question. This is a continuation of that global war on terror. And it is an absolutely ruthless attempt to control the debate and to extirpate from existence anyone who is not within the appropriate consensus. Part of the problem arises from what's just happened in this election, which is that the victor is someone that nobody really wanted. And his vice president is also somebody nobody really wanted. So you have a real problem when you have someone that nobody wanted, plus a sullen population that is very resentful over the last election, that it felt that it was robbed of its victory. So what can you do in those circumstances? Well, you have to crush dissent. And how do you crush dissent? You just simply push out everybody who expresses contrary views. Now, as you said, again, among your notes, we already had the preliminary to all of this during the COVID pandemic, which is more and more and more suppression of dissident voices, people who question the utility of masks, people who question the utility of lockdowns. So they just get pushed off the social media. They just become unpersons. And in a sense, you do become an unperson these days on account of social media. If you're not on Twitter, you're not on Facebook, nobody really knows of your existence. And I think we're going to get a lot more of that. And we've already seen this during the last few days. I mean, it's Trump's account has now been permanently banned by Twitter and Facebook. It's not going to come back. They're not going to have him back again, denouncing Biden and denouncing the legitimacy of the Biden-Harris team. That's it. That voice is gone. So there's going to be more and more of this because there are going to be more and more dissenting voices. This will be a very unpopular administration, and what you can do is just crush all dissident voices.
Philip, going back to the war on terror, we have the paradigm exists. You can go through the motions now. You identify the enemy. Of course, it'll be a different enemy this time, but the paradigm is there. The tools are there. The method is there, and it's being applied to the domestic population. And one of the things that we had, these tragic, awful events on Capitol Hill, which George and I talked about yesterday, I absolutely condemn any kind of use of force and violence. Absolutely condemn it, and no second thoughts there. However, given this new paradigm of targeting dissidents, who are the new terrorists or insurrectionists here, over the next few days and weeks, if people are identified from those events on Capitol Hill, of course, they're going to be their identities will be made public and due process will be worked against them. But all three of us and our audience witnessed month after month after month of extreme violence, extreme looting. And I don't know, maybe I'm not in the loop in that, but how many people have been picked up for doing that? And it was just as much videotaped as anything that we saw at Capitol Hill. Again, this dividing people. I mean, if you commit real crimes defined by the legal code, but if you have the right political attitude, it's okay. But if you do the same thing, but you have the bad attitude, they're going to go after you with an iron fist.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, the looters who actually were arrested in all these incidents in Minneapolis and in Oregon and elsewhere were invariably released immediately. Shoplifters were told, boy, if you really need that, you can take it, just go. They have insurance. So that's the kind of thinking that drives the Democratic Party to a large extent and the media. And that means that basically there's going to be a witch hunt for deplorables over the next 6 months. I think we're going to be seeing more and more of this because now everything is controlled by these people, and these people basically do not understand that the so-called deplorables, a lot of them are people who are out of work, who found America is the only major country where the lifespan is going down because people are sick. And these are the people who are afflicted by it, and they want change. And these people are the ones who are being turned into really the bad guys, into the evil guys, into the terrorists, domestic terrorists. And this is a process we're going to see going on and on for the next few months.
George, one of the things I found interesting in the last 24 hours, I have to say, to be honest with you, I was really quite stunned by the words of President-elect Biden and Kamala Harris, which, my God, I can't get used to that cackle. But I mean, what happened on the Capitol, I mean, within 24 hours, it was white supremacy. Did you watch those videos? I did too. We commented on them. Where did this come from, George?
Yes. They are exactly white supremacy. And the bizarre aspect of Biden's comments, when apropos of nothing, he said, well, if this had been Black Lives Matter, people would have been shot en masse. Now, of course, we all remember what happened in the summer. No one was shot en masse or even individually. It just didn't happen. And what is it? I mean, we already know that the only person, was the victim of serious violence was a young woman who was unarmed and who was shot by the Capitol Police. No one else. I mean, the media have tried to spin it by saying, 4 people died. But we now know that the people who died, I mean, one died of a heart attack, another died of a stroke, somebody else got trampled. But they're trying to massage the numbers. But the one person who's clearly the subject of violence was actually the violence by the police. But what Biden is saying is that, well, there was too little violence. We should have had more people killed. that would have taught them a lesson. So that there is that. But we now have the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee demanding that people be kept off planes.
That's the beginning. Yes, that's the beginning.
Exactly, because at the moment he's saying, well, keep out those who are identified as having taken part in what happened on Wednesday. But of course, what does it mean taking part? I mean, if you're just taking part in a kind of peaceful demonstration, why should you be kept off planes? But as you say, this is just the beginning. Then we're going to have people who belong to the wrong organization, subscribe to the wrong kind of websites or magazines, and all of them are going to be kept out of the plane. And these supposed liberals, quote liberals, unquote, are cheering this on. This is we want more repression. And we saw this during the various hearings when the internet giants, those weirdos like Zuckerberg and Dorsey came on, and they were urging them, why aren't you doing more to deplatform people? Why aren't you carrying out more censorship? So it's a very, very chilling situation.
Phil, for me, it's very reminiscent because for many years, when I was a young man, I lived in communist Eastern Europe, primarily Poland, but I visited Czechoslovakia, spent time in Hungary during the communist era and after the communist era. And I can remember I was I was like 20 years old and I was teaching English at Warsaw University. And I can remember my students wanting to go travel abroad, but they all were worried that when they would try to get their passport, everyone was worried they were on a list that would deny them a passport, so you couldn't even try to get a visa. Are you on the list? Okay, would that be for a political activity, or maybe there's compromat on you for other reasons here? But I mean, when I watch the mainstream media, now we have to start gathering the names, get a database, and it was like, I've seen this before, Phil.
Yeah, well, the fact is the mechanism already exists. We have the special designated nationals list, which is the list of all people around the world that are sanctioned by the United States government. And this list is 500 pages long. So all you have to do is apply the same logic that these people, these American citizens who are dissidents, are enemies of the state, and we start making a list. And that list will make it so that they can't travel. It'll make it. Let me cite an example that occurred just a few months ago. An Iranian NGO, non-government organization, was holding a conference in Beirut. And it invited a number of American academics and people like myself to speak at it. We were warned prior to the event taking place, that if we went to this conference, we would be accused of materially supporting terrorism, and we would be arrested upon return to the United States. So this is happening already, and you just expand the list and you expand the explanations of why you were doing this. You make it more plausible, more politically correct, shall we say, to certain constituencies, and this is what's coming.
One of the things that I find very interesting, George, I don't know if there is a connection, we'll see, but with the election results in Georgia, so, and then with the incoming Vice President Kamala Harris having a tiebreaker, it seems to me that the images that we saw from Capitol Hill, they intend to act fast. They're in a very fast track, okay? Because if you can't get what you want through negotiation, then you just get it through fiat, through force, okay? And it's quite chilling because, the three of us and the people who watch this video, we think about these things here, but it's difficult to think about things when they're happening at breakneck speed, okay? I mean, this is happening, and they're not even in power yet. And this is what they're telegraphing us, what they intend to do.
Yes, that's exactly right. And of course, all of the corporations that support the Democrats are very much in sync with this. So yesterday, Simon and Schuster
Yes.
canceled a book with Senator Josh Hawley. Now, what was Hawley's sin? He was exercising his constitutional rights, the rights that he has prescribed, the responsibility he has prescribed by the Constitution, which is to challenge the electors if he deems that appropriate. This has been done by Democrats for decades. Nothing at all unusual in what Josh Hawley did. However, Simon and Schuster, trying to keep in with the spirit of the times, said that this is horrific, inciting violence and whatever. So this is clearly what is happening. And you're absolutely right, because the Democrats, they have this moment. They've caught their opponents off guard. So they are going to pounce, and they're going to just ram their enemies' noses into the dirt. Now, there's obviously there's going to be an election in 2022. The Democrats are gearing up for that because they know they're very vulnerable to losing both the House and the Senate. So what are they going to do? Well, if you crush dissent, that's very helpful. If you get rich people like Mark Zuckerberg to intervene in various states, much as he did during this election, in all sorts of ways to help the Democrats by having all these mail drop boxes and so on. Well, that's going to be helpful, and you can bet your bottom dollar that the Democrats are now working to ensure that they retain both houses in the 2022 election.
Phil, I just have this feeling, a pit in my stomach that we're staring into the abyss because. With the kind of rhetoric coming out of people that will be in the next administration here, they intend to rule without half the country, and they don't care. And what's on top of it, what we saw in the general election this year, I think there's good reason to believe it's going to be replicated because nobody really wants to look at what happened during the election. And so we could have, another sea, an ocean, a universe of ballots floating around again and get the same outcome. See, so much of the tensions we've had over the last few weeks also is obviously about the election. In the minds of tens of millions of people, it was not a fair election. But what's compounding the problem now is that not only do you have no redress, you have no relief in the legal system, the laws that are made to make sure elections do have integrity. But now you have on top of this, not only are you sore losers, if you question this, you are part of an insurrection. I mean, it's compounding the problem. It's not alleviating it, okay?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I found laughable in the Democratic arguments for things like mail-in ballots was that they kept claiming, oh, this was to make us more democratic. This was to make so that everybody would get an opportunity to vote and they wouldn't have to walk down to the corner firehouse to do it. And in my state, Virginia, for example, which I looked at very carefully, you could register and you could vote in elections without ever coming into contact with another human being, without ever having to produce a document that said that you were who you were claiming to be. My wife and I received in the mail, unsolicited by us, 8 ballots from various sources, and we could have voted 8 times. So this is voting by mail is corrupt, is innately corrupt. And essentially, this is something that the Democrats are going to exploit the hell out of to make sure they stay in control forever.
I mean, I don't know, Phil, who invented the phrase? I love it. Vote early and often. Well, you could have voted early and often. Go ahead, George. You want to jump in?
No, I mean, I agree entirely with what Phil has just said. I mean, that it is absolutely ridiculous that all of the security precautions that people have put in place in elections, and which we expect anywhere in the world, and which is that, hey, you have to present an ID, you have to show proof of residence, And you have to show up on
your thumb ink.
You have to show up on election day. It's all just gone out of the window. Apparently, you just simply, you just sign something, mail it in, and then think, well, isn't there going to be some kind of checking on signatures? Make sure that signature belongs to this person. No. That's voter suppression. So, no checking of signatures. And then when after the election, you say, well, can we actually do an audit, check whether these signatures really match what was the signatures in the registry? No, can't be done. Sorry, too late. It's done. I mean, it's a joke. Now, everybody can see that it's a joke. So all you can do in such circumstances is to make sure that nobody questions this. And I think that's always the case with, if you come into government with a mandate, like Obama did in 2008, just because of his personal popularity, or Trump did in 2016, even though it was a very divided country, but he did have a mandate. But if you arrive really without any kind of a mandate, you promise nothing other than mandatory mask wearing, then you win by these dubious methods, well, you've got a very resentful population. So you have to repress these people questioning any of this. And any of the kind of proposed reforms, obviously the system has to be reformed. Well, these have to be crushed. You are not to question the system. This is really fine. The more mail-in ballots, the better.
Phil, what's really pathetic for me is that the people that are behind this, the people that will be in the new administration and the party of Pelosi and Schumer and AOC and others, they think they're doing it for our better good. They think they're actually doing it because we just can't get with the program somehow. I find that horrifically chilling, because that's what authoritarians do. They may smile and they may pat you on the back, and and they might do nice pictures on Instagram with their kids and pets and all that. But at the end of the day, it's authoritarian because we know better, and you have to do what we say.
Yeah, that's one of the most irritating aspects of the Democratic Party, the way their sanctimoniousness, their self-righteousness about what they're doing. They're doing it for your own good. They're doing it because they want everyone to be able to vote. This is the kind of lines they use. And then, of course, they back it up with the thing that I'm finding very pernicious is the increase in allegations of hate crimes and things like that. So in other words, you can, in terms of something you wrote when you were age 14 in a school notebook, suddenly you're someone who was a hate crime person, like this girl who got deprived of her college scholarship recently here in the United States because of something she wrote years before and used an unacceptable word, according to the Democrats. So this hate crime stuff it criminalizes us saying what we feel we want to say, and it criminalizes association with other people. It criminalizes a whole lot of things, and this, I think, is going to be the cutting edge of how to silence people like us.
Yeah, that's our good friend Dmitry Babich. I frequently have lunch with him, and he's a keen observer of Western politics and ideology. And and I've asked him to compare it, and he said that the difference is in the Soviet Union we knew a lot of it was just propaganda, but we learned to find the humor in the hypocrisy of it and just the lunacy of it all, and that's what got us through. I don't see that happening in the West, okay, because it's much more pernicious, okay, and you have to admit, as Dima would say, the Soviet population didn't have much expectations, obviously, because of the history of the regime. So there was that kind of comfort zone, but you didn't expect things to change. In the West, all three of us were weaned on the fact that we can better ourselves better than our parents. We can be more successful. We believed in what was called the American dream, but that is dead right now. And in replacing it is that Phil, there's going to be the American dream for some, but not for all. Okay, and that's at the end of the day, they're choosing winners.
Right. Right, that's exactly right. But of course, we know about the Western propaganda system. I mean, that's been around for quite a while, but it was always applied to places abroad. So we were taught that these are the bad guys. They want to repress you. They want to kill you. They want to throw you in the gulag. They want to torture you. We're the good guys. We're coming in to bring democracy and freedom. So we were always working within this paradigm, and then, you know, the consumers of American news never really questioned any of these things. What has really happened now is that you brought this propaganda system domestically, whereby we have the good guys, the people who care about freedom and democracy, and then you have the bad guys. You know, they're the horrible, the deplorables, the great unwashed. And therefore, anything that we do to them is always for the greater good. I mean, if we put them in prison, or, you know, send them away to a kind of a gulag for 25 years for breaking and entering, but that's for the greater good, because you know, much like, you know, the American propaganda system always justified all the terrible things that were done by the United States. Well, but it's for the greater good, because down the road we will have democracy, freedom, and all those wonderful things. But for the time being, yes, we need to torture them to death. But they'll be grateful for us in the long run.
You know, Philip, even in recent memory, Milosevic, he's the next Hitler. Saddam Hussein, he's the next Hitler. Okay, and then to continue with George's analysis, and the next Hitler was Trump. Okay, it's come home to roost. Okay, and I guess my last question to you, Phil, is that this is very depressing what we're talking about. What can we as conservatives do, if anything?
You know, I get asked that a lot, and people say, well, you write this and you do this and you talk about this. What can we do? Well, my answer to that is we just have to keep doing it, because we really don't have a choice. I mean, the fact is that these people are essentially subverting the values, the Western Christian values that took 2,000 plus years to evolve and seem to be working pretty well for a long time. And they really want to make these values go away. George Orwell will be delighted to see what goes on here in America, where we've invented expressions like domestic terrorism to vilify the people who are against the system, where white supremacy becomes an integral part of domestic terrorism, whereas BLM is not. You know, this is what's happening, and this is why we have to keep doing what we do.
Yeah, George Orwell wrote his book 1984 as a warning, not as a user's guide, a user's manual. Okay, and it's being used as that. Okay, I want to thank Philip Giraldi and George Szamuely for being here on the Gaggle today. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and please write comments down below. Tell us what you think. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much, and we're going to keep our laser-like focus on this story here. Stay with the Gaggle.